Good morning, everyone. I'm James Taylor. I'm the Director for Student Services for the Metropolitan School District of Warren Township, and this is my colleague, Mr. Jeff Whitman from the Department of Education. This is the McKinney-Vento workshop. How many people know about McKinney-Vento? Somebody tell me something about it right quick. What do you know? This is a test.
Homeless students.
Homeless students. Focus. What else do you know about it? That's it? That's good. It's going to be a great work. It's going to be a great workshop then. You're here to learn. Mr. Whitman will cover foster care, and I'm going to cover McKinney-Vento. Now, there's a lot to know about McKinney-Vento. So sometimes what you think you may know, you really don't know. And after many, many, many years, I'm still learning about McKinney-Vento. So there's a lot of guidance out there on it. So I'm going to give you the quick version of it, but I want you to participate with me. So anytime you have any questions, just raise your hands and just stop me as I go, okay? Because I don't want to fly through this. I want you to participate with me. Today, we're going to become familiar with the important concepts of McKinney-Vento. The definition of homelessness, HUD versus the Department of Education, making the case for moving from here to there, because a lot of school districts just don't believe that homelessness is what it is. I always say that homelessness is a situation. It's not a person. So people happen to fall into bad situations. We're going to talk about eligibility, immediate enrollment, school selection, transportation, coordination with Title I. He'll talk about some of that stuff. Review district fiscal responsibilities. He'll talk about some of that stuff maybe. And transportation, state responsible students, impending domicile, courtesy notifications, and review. We probably won't get to several of these because we'll spend most of our time up there. McKinney-Vento history, 9 titles within the Act. Okay, Title VII addresses education, signed into law into 1987 by my man Ronald Reagan. The largest amendment took place in 2002 as it became part of the No Child Left Behind Act, and it's named after Stuart McKinney and Bruce Vento. These were 2 conservative Republican senators, and they loved helping homeless families, and they put it into law, and they've done a lot of great things for homeless families over the years. On December 10th, 2015, President Obama signed into law the Every Student Succeeds Act, is what you hear about now, called ESSA. Reauthorizing the Elementary and Secondary School Education Act. The bill pretty much maintains annual testing, does a lot with that, accountability of school improvement, and it aims to create transparency regarding achievement gaps among disadvantaged youth and subgroups in our community, including foster care youth. This law really took a really good look at foster care youth because under the McKinney-Vento Act, we were only looking at homeless kids. We did look at foster care kids, but some of the rules just were not the same. So DCS stepped in and we did a lot of work with them, and we finally got our act together and we made it good for both parties. So here's the definition. The Department of Education defines homelessness as this. Let's go with this first. Department of Housing and Urban Development defines homelessness as somebody who is literally homeless. Imminent risk of homelessness, homelessness under the federal statutes, fleeing and or attempting to flee domestic violence, or someone who has been homeless for consecutively 10 days, 15 days, or more. The Department of Education defines homeless as anybody who is doubled up with a family or friends, residing in hotels or motels, residing in emergency shelter or transitional housing, or unsheltered. The big difference is this. If you don't have a key to your house, based on the DOE, you're considered homeless. Oftentimes in our school district, our secretaries and people try to determine homelessness based on their personal values. We have to follow the guidelines as much as we can, so it's a huge paradigm shift for institutions as we know it. This is what sometimes people see as homeless. So this is what people know, this is what they see. You drove past it on the way in. Somebody's always hanging out on the corner asking for money. Some people are real, some people are not. How do you determine who's real and who's not? Anybody? You can't. Okay? You can't. Sometimes you'll get, how many people give money to people on the corner? Raise your hand, tell the truth. Why do you give money?
Because they seem to need it.
They seem to need it. You?
Something in my heart says give it to them.
Something in your heart says that. Anybody else? Who's afraid to give money? Who doesn't want to roll down their window? Tell the truth, people. Come on, we're going to be transparent in here. I was teaching in my class the other day. I teach a social work class, and I said, how many people see people on the street sometimes and they make you nervous? Okay? It's okay. And all of my students said, well, when I'm walking to class, I see construction workers and they kind of make me nervous. I said, why? She said, well, they're smoking cigarettes. They're just hanging out. I'm like, so that makes you nervous. So when you see a homeless person, somebody approaches you when you go to the McDonald's, how does that make you feel? It kind of makes you feel nervous because you don't know who's who and what's what. But sometimes you have that inkling in your heart to give, and you just do so. There's a common misconceptions about homelessness. I had a chance to visit 3 homeless shelters last week. I went to Dayspring. How many people have heard of Dayspring Shelter? Okay, located off of 16th and College. I went to the Wheeler Mission. Heard of Wheeler Mission, right? And I went to Stopover. How many people heard of Stopover? So I went to Dayspring, which serves 14 families. It's one of the few shelters that takes in families. So when our people are trying to find a place to stay, they don't want to be separated, okay? And it's very hard during the wintertime to find a place where the whole family can go. And Dayspring only has 14 rooms. So, and they can stay there for at least a month, up to a month. Wheeler Mission, one of the largest shelters in the city, they can take up to 850 men at a time, okay? Now, let's be honest, what is your perception of the Wheeler Mission? What do you think you'll see if you went into the building? What do you think it'll look like? Come on, tell the truth. I know you're thinking it. Huh?
Lots of men.
Lots of men. What else? What else? Crowded. What else? I can hear somebody thinking stinky, dirty. I hear you. I got ESP. Okay? You're just not saying it. So, but the reason I took the trip was to kind of get rid of that misconception. The place is beautiful. It's very clean. They make every man take a shower, whether they want to or not. If they're going to stay there, they have to take a shower. They have bunk beds, plastic on every mattress. They even have a room to where a man has to stand in it and it gets to 150 degrees Fahrenheit and it kills bed bugs. So, I mean, I was amazed at how nice the place was, and the food is good. I'm just saying. I didn't taste it, but I smelled it. Okay. So then there's a ladies' shelter for the Wheeler Mission also, and they take up to about 450 families. Well, women. So you have that. Now, Stopover is for children, teenagers. Did you all know that teenagers is the largest population of the homeless people in our city? Why is that? Does anybody know that? Well, it is because one adult may have 1 to 2 to 3, 4 kids. And those kids are put in a bad situation because of the adult. So, but Stopover has 2 shelters. They have a transitional shelter over by Cecina High School, and they have a emergency shelter over by Tech High School. And would you believe that they're never full? They're never full. They're right down the street from Tech High School. Never full. You got to ask yourself the question, why? If we have a bunch of kids couch surfing from place to place, if we have families staying in hotels every day, paying more than what you would pay for a mortgage, you have to ask yourself, why are the shelters not full for children? Most homeless people live on the street, myth. Most homeless individuals are single men, myth. Homelessness is on the decline, myth. Minorities in homelessness, minority individuals are 1.5 times more likely to be homeless. African Americans are 3 times more likely to be homeless. In 2013, approximately 48% of sheltered homeless families with children were African American, even though African American families made up 14% of the U.S. families with children and just 29% of families in poverty. Makes you go, In contrast, white families comprise 54% of U.S. families with children, but only 23% of sheltered homeless families. 2013 survey of homeless youth project found that African American youth were less likely to identify themselves as homeless. Why is that?
Social stigma.
What's that?
Social stigma.
So why is it that another ethnic group would do it and blacks wouldn't?
Because we're proud people.
We're proud people. Okay, that's a part of our collective.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, okay. White youth surveyed were more likely to self-identify and to access services for the homeless, such as shelters and food banks. Why is that? White people? I'm keeping it real. It's a cultural thing, and we have to be aware of that. So why would that be more of the case? And a lot of times when you're the majority, that it's almost the norm. It's what we do. We seek assistance. Okay? So this just tells us sometimes that it's not what you believe. The data tells us that it's something else. There are more homeless people today than during the Great Depression. The difference is that instead of single men, many American homeless are children. 90% of the homeless population are the working poor, which kind of accounts for the temporary residency thing and the doubled up thing. More people are doubled up than ever before. Low and minimum wage makes it virtually impossible to afford housing, especially in major cities. I play a game with my students called Spent. I give you $1,000. You have 3 kids. You have to live and spend $1,000 in a month. Tell me everything that can happen within a month that can go wrong. Somebody tell me. You can lose your job. Medical expenses. Car breaks down. You have to buy food. You have to make major decisions about how you're going to spend your $1,000, and you have to make it from paycheck to paycheck. These are the working poor. Pretty much this kind of signifies cost of living, loss of job, low wages, unexpected bills. And let me say this, it can happen to anybody. Everybody in this room is one hurricane, one tornado, one spouse death, one medical emergency away from being close to homeless. Doesn't make a difference who you are. Okay? I talk about this all the time, and with my peers, I had a couple of superintendents and assistant superintendents whose husbands have cancer. And it's just a sad thing to see anybody go through this. And I talked about homelessness in a training that we had, and when I said you're one spouse away from, hitting tough times, she just broke into tears because the truth hit home. And we all think that we're, at the point to where that possibly couldn't happen to us, but it could happen. Hurricane Irma and what was the last hurricane's name? Harvey just proved that to everybody. When you lose your material possessions, and this is what happens to a lot of our families, they lose their material possessions because of sometimes bad decisions, but a lot of times other things also. So who qualifies for what we call McKinney-Vento? Who qualifies? Children or youth who lack a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence. Sharing the housing of others due to loss of housing, economic hardship, or similar reason. It's called doubled up. People who live in hotels and motels. Now, there's some people that choose to live in hotels and motels. Now, does that make them homeless? You have to ask yourself the question, what were the antecedents that made them go to the hotel? Because, like I said, the hotels are just as expensive as a mortgage. Living in emergency or transitional shelters, abandoned in hospitals. Who qualifies? Kids, no, this is no longer the case. Kids awaiting foster care placement. So if kids are awaiting foster care placement, they can be designated as McKinney-Vento, but these days with ESSA, they're classified as foster care. Living in a public or private place not designed for humans to live. Living in cars, parks, abandoned buildings, substandard housing, bus or train stations or similar settings. We had a kid that was living in one of the dugouts at our school. He would just hang out there every night and, do what he needed to do. We had another kid who was living in a nice subdivision. Sometimes people move out, somebody will get in and they'll squat. The kid dropped out of school. He said, I got a nice house. He called it his house. And he didn't want to come back to school because he liked the house and nobody was there and nobody claimed the house. And every night he'd go there, turn the lights on, and just live. Unaccompanied youth living in the above circumstances. Additional school staff understandings. Systematically, we know that homelessness is not the only issue that these students are trying to manage. Unsafe living situations, peer pressures, poverty, mental health problems, and chronic health concerns. These are kids that are living trauma-informed, trauma-type lives. And a lot of schools are going to the trauma-informed school model. So these are what our kids are living in, the situations. Lack of community support. What is the impact of poverty and homelessness for children on their physical health, malnutrition, chronic and acute illnesses, on their education, transfers, absences, low academic achievement, on their mental health, depression, anxiety, adjustment disorders. For a large portion of our kids, their mental health diagnoses go undiagnosed. So you may have a class of 10, 15, or 20 kids that have never, ever received any type of mental health counseling. Okay? Would you, if your family life was problematic, would you disclose this information in detail to somebody you don't know? Raise your hand if you would. Raise your hand if you would not. Here's my question. What makes you think a family coming in to enroll their kid would disclose information in front of you? In a setting like this, you have registration. Everybody's happy, everybody's joyful. Hey, sir, may I help you? I'd like to enroll my child. Where do you live at, ma'am or sir? Can we talk? No, sir, where do you live at? Well, if you don't have the information that we need, sir, you're going to have to come back. I'm sorry, you must have that birth certificate, you must have this, you must have that. I don't have that because I just don't have it. Sorry, sir, we can't help you. Thank you. Wow. And secretaries ask a lot of questions. They're the keeper of the gates. Families don't even get to the principal or the assistant principal or the counselor. The secretary is guarding that information like it's their own, it's their life. Okay? So we have to get past that. Unaccompanied homeless students and or parents may or may not wish to discuss or feel comfortable sharing issues occurring in their home life. So sometimes you have to take a person behind closed doors and ask those tough questions. Okay? Five controversial issues. Some school districts believe it was a waste of time to enroll homeless students who will almost certainly move again within a short period of time. Why should I enroll this kid? They're going to move. Some argue that it is unsafe for homeless students to be enrolled until they are properly immunized. Change in the law pertussis. So, we kept kids out. One year, I put everybody out. We said everybody got to go because you're violating the policy for shots. And when we put some kids out, we couldn't get them back. We couldn't find the kids. And I got in trouble because it was before count day. How about that? You see what I'm saying? And it wasn't even my responsibility. I was just the social worker. It was the nurse's responsibility. But since I was over the nurses, guess who got in trouble? So we have to be careful. The unaccompanied minor presents special challenges in balancing students' rights with CPS duties. So what that means is that a lot of unaccompanied kids that are out there, 17, 18 years old, or 16, 17, 18 years old, they're just floating out there. They're not a part of the system. They go from couch to couch, from place to place. So CPS hasn't caught up with them yet. Some staff impose their values on the situation, automatically creating a barrier for enrollment. It doesn't make a difference what you believe. I'm sorry. I don't mean to offend anybody. Your values aren't important at this time. It's about enrolling the kid in school so that the kid can get an education. Some believe it is their job to protect the tax-paying community and the school district from lying parents. The parent's a liar, not the kid. Yeah, some parents will lie their butts off. You know why they're lying? Because they want to get their kid in a good school. It means everything to them for their kid to be in a good school that's safe, where they know they have good teachers, where they know they're going to get a hot breakfast and a lunch. I met with the parent yesterday. She was there for truancy. She has 2 kids in high school and 1 kid in middle school. She has an attendance problem, the middle school kid. She has an attendance problem because mom lives out of the district. Somebody didn't catch the fact that mom lived out of the district because mom is not McKinney-Vento. She's not classified as homeless, and she's not one of our non-legal settlement persons that we let in based on an agreement. But because mom isn't bringing her child to school, mom was sent to truancy court. So mom asked the question. She said, "Are you going to put me out?" And I said, "Ma'am, I'm going to do what's in the best interest of the student." Okay? She had tears in her eyes. So I'm going to go back to that school and have a talk with the principal and say, "Look, the senior is good. We want to graduate that kid. The junior is good because they're on track to graduate. The middle school child may have to transfer because it's not in the best interest of the kid because the kid is not getting to school in a timely manner." Okay? There's something wrong here. Mom was paying $30 almost every day to transfer the child to school on an Uber. That's how bad she wanted her kid in Warren Township schools. So to me, that means a lot to me that that parent is trying to educate their child, because you got some parents that just don't give a damn. That's not one of them. Okay? Rationale behind the program: each time students change schools, they become further and further behind from their peers. So the whole purpose of McKinney-Vento is to keep kids on track. We want to make sure that the continuity of their education stays intact, even though the parent is all over the place sometimes. Many homeless youth drop out of school because they feel they can never catch up. One of the worst things that can happen to a kid is falling behind and feeling hopeless. So we have to encourage them to stay on track. McKinney-Vento, the district team, should do a couple of things. Identification, that's the secretary's job, is to identify those families when they come to enroll. Now, not all secretaries want to do that because they're keepers of the gate and they're protecting and they're taking everything literally that you tell them. Okay, so oftentimes we try to say, help that secretary to identify families. Enrollment and success, data collection analysis. McKinney-Vento also goes down to all the way to early childhood. We want to make sure that the health, mental health, and the dental care is in place for the kid. Informing parents and posting the rights that they have. Dispute resolution. A lot of times when we talk about McKinney-Vento, people believe that we just opened up Pandora's box to let anybody in your schools. But you know what? We have a process to keep people who are chronically lying out. It's called the dispute resolution process. And I think I've mastered that process in my school district because I'm not afraid to tell the teachers and the administrators that you're wrong and to take the side of the parents. And it's a balancing act because sometimes you want to please your staff because some of the kids are giving them hell, okay? And sometimes you want that kid out of your school because the kid and the parent are giving you hell. But the law doesn't dictate that, okay? And unaccompanied youth. Once again, when you see this, these are the 3 words that you always use to determine if a person meets the qualifications of McKinney-Vento. Is it fixed? Is it regular? Is it adequate? Do they go there often? Is that where they go at night? Do they go there on a consistent basis? And this part right here, adequate, what does adequate mean to you? Are they sleeping on the floor? I had somebody put out a family, once again, in my school district. The mom had multiple sclerosis, and she lived on the top floor in an apartment. She's on a cane, on a walker. And I said, now, does it make any sense that this mom lives on the 3rd floor? Okay? She sleeps on the floor. Her child sleeps on the floor. I did a home visit, and I saw them on the floor. It was a 1-bedroom apartment that her daughter rented out. So, and mom is sleeping on the couch with medical issues, and my people in my school said that she's not homeless. Come on. She was homeless. So we have to make sure that this right here, adequate, means just what it says. Here are the codes that you'll use, that the Department of Education uses. Sheltered pretty much means that you're living in a residential setting. Doubled up means you're living with somebody else. Unsheltered means that you live in a car somewhere in the community. or you're living just in a park. Accompanied pretty much means that you're coming with somebody, and unaccompanied is when you have no one with you at all and you're showing up just saying, I want to enroll in school. Same thing, women's shelter, transitional living homes. Stopover is the place I told you about regarding teenagers. We talked about fixed, regular, and adequate once again. That's how we determine it. What you should know is get the facts as best as you can get them. Most school districts have questionnaires that they have people sign up for. People read and they, are you homeless? Have you lived here at this amount of time? Have you moved any time in the last month? So just a short questionnaire that you can have to help you out before you even see the family. Analyze the facts as you know them. People will come in with fantastic lies. How do you determine if somebody's lying or not? Very hard to do. Does the living situation fit into one of the specific examples of homelessness listed by the law? Is a living arrangement another type of situation that is not fixed, regular, or adequate? What do the facts tell me about their situation? And this is what we give our parents. Contact myself, the McKinney-Vento liaison. Students experiencing homelessness have the right to attend one of two schools: the local attendance area school, or any public school that students living in the same attendance area are eligible to attend, the school of origin. So let's say, for instance, a student attends your school, whatever school you work at. You're the school of origin. The kid leaves for whatever reason and becomes homeless, and the kid ends up in Warren Township's district. So the school of origin would be your school, and if that kid wanted to stay at your school by law, you will be obligated to make sure that that kid stayed there for the continuity of his or her education. The family has the right of selection, not the school. The school can't say, well, you don't live in our district anymore, you have to go somewhere else. The family gets to say, because I live closer to Warren, I want to go to Warren, but at the same time, I love what your school is doing for me, I want to stay here. So that's how that works. They get the right of selection. Now, a lot of people think that that's unfair, but it's the law, and we didn't make it up. The term best interest. For school selection, a best interest determination must occur. What is in the best interest of the kid? Let's say a kid is at your school for now, and the family ends up in Pike Township, or where we're at right now, and the ride is a total of 25 miles one way, or 20 miles one way. Is it in that kid's best interest to attend your school? Yes or no? Anybody? Why? Why is it not?
Would it be 20 miles would be too far to drive for a child? Or?
Yes, but as the parent, I insist because I love you and I love your school. So what do you do?
I guess it would depend.
You have to ask your question. What's in the best interest? How can the parent get the kid there? Is the parent struggling to get the kid there? Is the parent using Uber? Is she using Indigo? You have to talk to the parent and find out what is your transportation source. And you have to determine what's in the kid's best interest. And somebody has to tell the parent, well, maybe it's not in the best interest. But parents have a different mindset. Parents believe they know what's best sometimes. But a lot of times, we as professionals know that it's not in the best interest. It's probably easier for you to go to the school in the community. And if you move back over this way, then maybe you can come back to us. No, I love my teacher. I love Jamie. She's my favorite teacher, and my son loves her. So they want to keep the kid with you. Okay? So it's all about what's in the best interest of the kid and the family. Best interest keeps homeless students in their school of origin to the extent feasible. We picked up a kid from Anderson, Indiana, and transported him all the way to Warren. Parents were in a domestic violence situation. The only shelter for domestic violence was in Anderson. They had to get her out of town. And I'm like, boy, that's a long way to go to pick up one kid. And the mom insisted that we pick her up. Okay? So what did we do? Another school in Indianapolis was transporting a kid here, so we asked if we could share transportation. and they brought the kid to Indianapolis, then we picked the kid up from their drop-off spot, and we're able to work it out with the family. So there are ways to get the job done. Feasibility factors listed in the U.S. Department of Education guidance, the age of the kid. So let's say you have a kindergartner or a second grader on the bus. Is it cool to have a kindergartner get on the bus at 4 in the morning or 5:30 in the morning? Is it cool to have a kindergartner ride the bus for 3 hours before they get to their destination? It's not cool. But some parents insist on it, and the parents have the right of selection. That's the funny thing about that. The law is kind of quirky in that sense, because I would believe that the professionals have the right of selection. But let's go back to what I said about some of the professionals. We're kind of biased sometimes, and we're kind of value-laden, and we protect our schools. So it's kind of a conflict of interest in both. It's kind of strange. It's a strange thing to work with. The distance of the commute and the impact that it may have on the students, personal safety issues. One parent said that I live in a bad community and I don't want my child out at 6 in the morning in the dark on 16th and Illinois. I got you. I understand. Okay? The length of anticipated stay in a temporary shelter or a temporary location. How long is too long for us to transport your child? A year? A month? How long are we going to have to do this? Are you lying to us? When does it become regular, fixed, and adequate? Who makes that determination? The parent? The school? We don't know. We have to figure that out as a school. A lot of times I tell people at the end of every year, we kind of drop all transportation and we start over at the beginning of the year. They have to re-verify their status because they're kind of migrant. They come and they go. And we're not going to send a bus to someplace that you're not at. Because I just realized it costs $250 per day to drive from Warren to Pike. By the time you pay the bus driver, and by the time you pay for the diesel fluid, that's an expensive venture. So we're looking for better ways to transport our kids. Stop me at any time, I'm on the roll. Sharing housing with other persons due to loss of housing, economic hardship, or a similar reason is considered doubled up. Why did the parties move in together? Was it a crisis? Was it by mutual choice? When some people say I moved in with my boyfriend or girlfriend, is that a mutual choice? I'm engaged to be married. You know, things can go wrong. And if your name's not on the lease, you might be out on a limb. Okay, we have to consider all of those things. So how permanent is the living arrangement intended to be? Promises were made, promises can be broken, and kids can be left in a bad situation. Where would the family and youth live if they were not doubled up? There was a time where family got burned out of their home and we were giving Christmas assistance. And I went over to the house. There was a Cadillac in the front yard. It was close to Christmas. When I went into the house, there was a bunch of liquor on the bar. And I walked in and I said, man, I'm taking my gifts back. You guys look like you're okay. Family got mad at me. Why do you think they got mad at me? I thought they were taking advantage of the system. But what you see is not what you get sometimes. They were burned out of their home. They had left what they had left. And what I saw was probably somebody else's, or a combination of theirs, but they really didn't have anything. So I was wrong. I was wrong. I learned a lot of lessons over the past 30 years, okay? But it's based on trial and error. And sometimes I let my values get in the way. So I had to take the family Christmas shopping. So still, but the family was homeless. So we don't want to pass judgment and pass our values down. Cars parked, public spaces, abandoned buildings, substandard housing, unsheltered. When a family lives out of their car, where do you think they live at? What area? They can go anywhere they want to go. They find the safest lot possible for them and their family, and they camp out. So what address do they use? Any address they want to use. Okay? What's the safety implications of that? Well, our buses will tell them to go to the nearest apartment complex, and that's where we'll pick the kid up at. Okay? So, but the family in the car, we try to help the family with services to get them a home as best as we can. Okay? We have a lot of hotels and motels in Warren Township, and there's a lot of sex trafficking going on in those hotels. So they're not safe by any stretch of the imagination. So anytime somebody says to me that they're living in a hotel or motel, there's one room, unless you're living in a double tree that has a couple of rooms, and pretty much the accommodations are not that great. So that's McKinney-Vento by any stretch of the imagination. Educating unaccompanied and homeless youth, homeless kids, students not with legal guardians. We do a great job of trying to accommodate those kids as best as we can, because the goal for the Department of Education in all schools is to graduate our kids. So enroll them, enroll them, enroll them. The term unaccompanied youth includes a youth not in the physical custody of a parent or a guardian. That could be middle school kids. That can be elementary kids. So it says not in the physical custody of a parent or a guardian. Well, a guardian sometimes it's a relative or somebody that takes a kid in, and that's just temporary. I had a family take a family in, and they already had 8 people in their house, and they took in 3 or 4 more kids, and our school system still tried to put them out. I'm like, are you serious? You know, and they didn't have to take the family in, but they did, because they knew that the mom and the dad weren't right. Mom was on crack cocaine. She was in jail somewhere, so they took the family in. So there's a lot that goes along with why we do what we do with all of this. Donald's nephews, Huey and Dewey and Louie, are sent to live with Uncle Donald because their father was in the hospital and their mother, Della Duck, Donald's twin sister, could not care for them. So Donald became the guardian. I thought I'd throw that in there on you all. Homeless and accompanied. By 1941, the boys had permanently moved in with Donald, which made Donald their guardian. However, guardianship transfer was not sought. Okay? I took in my nephew and I became his legal guardian pro se. The lawyers were mad at me because, you know, lawyers don't like to lose money. They want you to pay them to do the work, and I did it myself. Okay, but I had to do it because back in those days, they wanted to make sure that you had guardianship of the kids before we enrolled the kids in the school. That's not the same way today. You can't ask a person for guardianship. If a kid shows up on your doorstep, you have to enroll them. 1 in 10 report being raped. These are unaccompanied youth. 1 in 100 die each year. The vast majority are from suicide. 75% report at least one parent who abused drugs or alcohol. 20 to 40% were sexually abused in their homes. 40 to 60% were physically abused. Many youth have been thrown out because of their sexual orientation. That's a big thing today with a lot of our kids. Their parents, you know, don't like the sexuality that they're choosing, and which causes friction, and the kids leave the home and the parents put them out of the home. 10% of currently homeless female teenagers are pregnant. And I would say that if you talk to a class of about 25 kids in any urban setting, if you ask them how many of their people have been in jail, over half of the class will raise their hand. Okay? So that's the population that we're dealing with today. So the dispute resolution process, it just gives you the ability to dispute when you feel like a parent is not telling the truth. It's a great process to use. I'm not going to get into that, so I'm going to have to turn it over to Jeff. And Jeff, it's all yours now. Any questions for me? I had so much fun talking to you guys. If you have an inclination that something is not right, you enroll the kid immediately, because if you enroll the kid, you know the kid is with you. If you let that kid go, and that kid is a missing persons kid, then you missed the opportunity to have a kid in your presence. But if you feel like something's not right, you enroll the kid and report them as a missing person. There's nothing wrong with covering your bases. And you can always call the clerk's office to ask who has physical custody. You can always call. It's on record. Okay? And or if you can't reach anybody, you do a third-party custodial guardianship. And if the parent is out of state, out of town, any place like that, you give a courtesy call. Hey, do you have the number to that parent? Can I reach out and give them a call? I do that often. You know, then that parent long distance will say, yeah, I left my child with so-and-so and so. Okay, thank you. Okay? So, but you have several things that you can do, but you enroll immediately. Okay? Any other questions? That's a good one. Well, Stopover is a good place for you all to know. So just make sure you write that name down, Stopover, and you can look them up online. And they service kids between 12 and 17. And it's voluntary. You know, if a kid needs a place to go, it's a great place to go. Nice duplex homes, carpet, bath, everything is nice about it. So, great place. Any other questions?